What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Pro Football Network NFL Draft YouTube channel. Today, we're going to run through the latest iteration of our top 50 watch list for the 2024 NFL Draft. Let's get right into it. Before we get into the content, make sure you click the like button, the subscribe button, and make sure you hit that bell so you can be notified whenever new NFL Draft content drops. Believe me, as we go through the summer and as we approach the 2023 season, you are going to want to be up to date on all the latest scouting information. With that said, let's get right into our latest watch list. At number 50 on our latest watch list, we have South Carolina quarterback Spencer Rattler. He was a prestigious recruit coming out of high school, signed with Oklahoma, and played there for a couple years before transferring to South Carolina. Last year was a little up and down for him. He threw 18 touchdowns and 12 interceptions, but over the final 5 games of the season, he was on a hot streak. He threw 1,389 passing yards, 13 touchdowns, and only 3 of those 12 picks. So he trended up. He's projecting growth heading into this final season. And if you look at the tools Rattler has, he's got great arm talent, great arm elasticity. He can throw off platform. He's very efficient in the short ranges. If he can continue to hone down that volatility in his game, he could eventually realize his early round potential and be one of the top quarterbacks in the 2024 class. At number 49 on our watch list, we have Georgia defensive back Javon Bullard. This is one of my favorite preseason watches so far. This is a guy who does not care how much energy, how much physicality you are bringing. He's going to match it and then some. 5'11", 180, so he's definitely undersized, definitely underweight, but he comes downhill with ferocity and support, and he is going to give his all in coverage. He is going to slab you at the contact point. But what I really liked about Bullard is that he actually has the twitch, the lateral agility, the fluidity to hold his own in coverage. He profiles best as a nickel defender. He played the hybrid star role for Georgia a lot last season. There's a little bit of off-field baggage that comes with him, but provided that he can stay on a straight and narrow from this point forward, he has the physicality, the versatility, and the tone-setting mentality to really be a valuable defensive piece in the years to come. At number 48 on our watch list, we have Jalen McMillan, wide receiver from Washington. This is the Robin to Rome Aduns' Batman. You'll see Aduns later on this list, but McMillan has early round potential in his own right. 6'1", 180, a little lean, but he's got great speed and explosiveness down the field from a purely frame perspective. He looks kind of like Jalen Hyatt. He doesn't quite have the speed that Hyatt does, but he can still stretch the field vertically. And I think McMillan is a more nuanced route runner. You've seen him sink his hips at stems. He can press upfield into stems. He's very fluid when it comes to swiveling around, chopping his feet. And that nuance combined with that long stride or burst and his instincts at the catch point to get his hands in the right spot, I think he has a lot of 3-level potential, and I would not be surprised if he rises even further up this list as the season goes on. At number 47, we have another wide receiver, Oregon's Troy Franklin. This is a guy who really broke out last year, catching 61 passes for 891 yards and 9 touchdowns. He's still growing, 6'3", 178, so he's really lean, really lanky, a spidery receiver threat, and you can see that on tape. A little leggy sometimes too. You can see that there's room for him to be more efficient as a separator, but he was a pure big play threat at Oregon in Bo Nix's first year. He's a guy who has an outrageous wingspan, very good ball tracking ability, very good coordination downfield, and that ability to generate big plays is something that I think could separate him from the pack. Other receivers may be a little more nuanced, a little more free as short area movers, but Troy Franklin has the length, the coordination to really deliver whenever he gets chances downfield. At number 46 on our watch list, we have our third receiver in a row. This is Vanderbilt's Will Shepard. This is a guy that I got to look at, and I think he's slept on in scouting circles early on right now. I think he's very, very complete as a wide receiver threat. You know, you look at his size, he's listed at 6'3", 200 pounds. He might be a little bit lighter than what he's listed at, but he's a lean receiver who's a very easy mover. He's got good explosiveness, good sink, very good flexibility as a route runner, and he's shown that he can use nuance to maximize that. But at the same time, too, at the catch point, very good at making high difficulty adjustments, very good at, contorting and getting himself in proper positioning. But what I like best about his film is that for a guy who's 200 pounds at most, he does not go down easy as a run after catch threat. He is a stubborn rack threat who is going to get as many yards as he can. He's slippery, but also physical enough to churn through contact. And I think that ability in particular could separate him from some of the longer, lankier route running savants that we've seen in this class. I think Will Shepard has a lot of potential, and I think he's only going to get more and more recognition as we go down the board. At number 45 on our watch list, we've got Texas A&M cornerback Tyreek Chappell. Tyreek Chappell played opposite Jalen Jones in 2022. I was a big fan of Jones, but I might like Chappell even more down the line. This is a guy who's not quite as big as Jones, only 5'11", 185 pounds. But for a guy at that size, you want them to be natural in coverage. And I think Chappell really exudes that, really embodies that. He's very fluid, flipping his hips to carry guys up the field. He's easy explosiveness and easy throttle button. It does not take much effort for him to accelerate and match with guys. And then at that point too, at the line, he's disciplined with his footwork and his technique. I think that ability to match guys, but also run with them at that size, and then ultimately make plays at the catch point too. He brings all of that. Not an elite size threat, but I think a guy who's very sound in coverage at each level, at each stage of the process. At number 44 on our watch list, we have Blake Corum, running back out of Michigan, a very recognizable name. This is a guy who was one of the best running backs, period, in college football last year. 247 carries, 1463 yards, and 18 touchdowns. 5'8", 210. Let me tell you, as another short king, 210 pounds is rocked up for 5'8". This is a guy who brings a ton of muscle mass to the fold. He's like Doug Martin, the muscle hamster on the field. But he's, for that physicality too, he's got good explosiveness, good lateral agility. He can dart around and make successive cuts. As a receiving threat too, he provides upside. He won't be an elite 3-down back at the next level, but I do think with Blake Corum, you're looking at a spark plug with that physicality, that contact balance to churn through and provide a heightened element for you. At number 43, we have Omar Speights, LB out of LSU. Omar Speights, man, is a guy that I don't think gets enough hype, and he's been very productive for years on end at Oregon State, one of the leading tackling producers heading into college football this season. But now coming to LSU, I think he's had the production, he has the quality tape. Now he has the spotlight to really magnify his profile at the next level. 6'1", 237 pounds. He's just a very, very sound defender in both phases. He's got great instincts and football IQ. He's shown that he can use his explosiveness and agility and coverage to blanket windows, make plays on the ball too. But then he also has the size, the frame density to stack and shed. He can sift through congestion. He's a very complete linebacker threat. And sometimes in the draft process, complete linebackers, they can be worth a lot, because especially this past cycle, you saw guys who were incomplete as prospects. I think that completion element alone is something that could generate a lot of appeal for Speights. At number 42 on our watch list, we have Jatavian Sanders, tight end out of Texas. This is a guy who I think is just coming into his own as a playmaking threat. And that's exciting when you look at the production he's already had. 54 catches for 613 yards and 5 touchdowns in 2022. I still think he's growing as a player, and on top of that too, Quinn Ewers, his quarterback, is still growing. So as Ewers gets better, I'm led to believe that that will only bring good things for Sanders. And at 6'4", around 250 pounds, great size, great length, and he's shown that he has that long strider athleticism to really be a threat up the seam, but then in the red zone too, very sure-handed, very authoritative catcher. And I think those two traits in particular, that lays a great foundation for Sanders to keep making a name for himself in this class. At number 41 on our watch list, we have Kansas State guard Cooper Beebe. He was actually an all Big 12 performer at tackle in 2021 before moving to guard in 2022, and he was even better there. Won all Big 12 again, first team all Big 12, and he was the Big 12 offensive lineman of the year. This is a guy who is plowing open lanes, 6'4", 332 pounds, a massive blocker, great frame density, great play strength, a great power as well. Then he's also, one thing that stands out for him on tape for me is just how aware he is, how smart he is as a blocker. When you look at his angle awareness on the move, but also keeping himself square in pass protection, using his hands to combat extensions. I think Cooper Beebe has the mix of high floor and high ceiling traits that you want in your interior blockers. And he might not be a round 1 guy for me, but he's someone that at this point I would target very early on round 2. At number 40 on our watch list, we have Oregon defensive lineman Brandon Dorlus. This is one of my favorite prospects in the 2024 NFL draft so far. 6'3", 285 pounds. He's got elite proportional length, and that shows up. He's a guy who, I think the term goblin really fits him. He can line up anywhere on the defensive line, wherever you need him. You think about Travon Walker. I think he has some Travon Walker light appeal at this point. Maybe not quite as agile or athletic overall, but still a very good athlete for his size, who has that power capacity. He can just plow open lanes on the interior, but he's also shown he can work around the edge and use successive hand moves. He's got a degree of ankle flexion too. Last year, he had 9.5 tackles for loss and 2.5 sacks. With DJ Johnson moving on, I think Dorlus could become that premier edge rushing threat for Oregon, but then he's also got the versatility to line up inside. So very valuable with his flexibility and his high-end tools. And I think, as he continues to produce, he'll only keep getting more recognition. At number 39 on our watch list, we have Ruke Orhorhoro. Say that 10 times fast. Defensive tackle from Clemson, 6'4", 303 pounds. This is a guy who's been, again, kind of like Dorlus, another versatile defensive lineman who I'm a big fan of because of that versatility that he provides. He's shown that he can play at 5 tech, but he can also play at 3 tech. He can stunt. He can play in NASCAR fronts. He was actually born in Nigeria and didn't start playing football until his junior year of high school. So all things considered, he is still pretty young in his football career, and that shows up. He's very traits rich. Sometimes he relies on those traits, but he's got elite explosiveness. He gets off the line incredibly quickly, very good length and power capacity for his size. And as he continues to learn more on the pass rushing side, learn about the nuance of the position, he could be a very dangerous threat for you, especially in a modern NFL where alignment versatility on the defensive line is very, very in demand. At number 38 on our watch list, we have Arkansas running back Raheim Sanders, 6'2", 227 pounds. This guy is if a Rock'em Sock'em robot learned how to run, this is what it'll look like. This is a guy who, he can be a little stiff and tightly wound at times, but when he is a runway straight ahead, he's very tough to take down with solo tackles because he's just so dense. He's so hard charging, that inertia that he provides on any given down with his combined explosiveness, the speed, the contact balance, the physicality. Raheim Sanders has all of that too. And he's also proven, for that size, while he doesn't quite have elite lateral agility, he can still be a very good receiving threat too. He has that nuance, he has the hand coordination. So I'm a big fan of his. I think that workhorse size in particular is something that he provides that you look at some of the other top running backs in this class, not all of them can match Raheim Sanders, but he's got that size and to go along with it, very explosive. He's got that turbo button. His nickname is Rocket, and I think it checks out. This is a guy who has all the traits. At number 37 on our watch list, we have Clemson running back Will Shipley. I was a little bit lower on Shipley to start the process before I had a chance to watch him in depth. The size, 5'11", 205, not the biggest guy, but you watch him on tape and you see why he was such a highly touted recruit coming out of high school. This is a guy who has incredible hips for the position, which, at running back, especially when you're managing space in tight ranges in the congested areas, the second level, having the hip flexibility to stack cuts quickly and manage space and control space is very valuable. And I think Will Shipley has some of the best hip flexibility in this entire class. And to go along with it, he's got the short area instincts to stack cuts, to process space and act on that information quickly. I'm a big fan of the natural running ability that he provides. He's not a bruiser like Raheim Sanders, but he's such a natural runner. I'm hard pressed to find a scenario where he doesn't go on to be a productive running back in the next level. At number 36 on our watch list, we have Denzel Burke, cornerback out of Ohio State. Ohio State has a long tradition of producing NFL corners. Marshawn Lattimore, Jeffrey Okudah, the list goes on and on. Denzel Burke figures to be next in line right now. You never want to scout the helmet. You never want to say that a guy is going to be that kind of player just because others came before him. But I think Burke does have the tools. Now, he needs to rebound after 2022. It was kind of a down year for him. He only had 5 pass breakups, but, in 2021, he flashes ball production again, an interception, 12 pass deflections. So we know he has the ball skills. We know he can convert the catch point. He's got great length at 6'1", 190. He's a lean corner with a great disruption radius. And then he's also flashed good technique at the line. So I think, for Burke, overarching consistency is more of what he needs. But if he can continue to grow in that aspect, he has enough fluidity and enough athleticism with that length to really kind of, convert on those traits and become a quality corner at the next level. At number 35 on our watch list, we have Florida cornerback Jason Marshall Jr. This is a guy who, he's a 5-star recruit. He has 5-star pedigree, and yet it doesn't feel like a ton of people are talking about him yet. It's kind of interesting. But looking at Jason Marshall Jr., watching him on film, and I think the whole Florida defense has room to grow a little bit from last year, but 6'1", 198 pounds. He had a pick and 8 pass deflections last year. Sometimes it's just how a guy moves that can tell you a lot about him. And Jason Marshall Jr. moves like a 5-star. That is for sure. He shows glimpses of exciting corrective twitch as an athlete. He's got fluidity for his size, for that length, right? But then he's also got the playmaking ability. It's a combination of getting yourself in the proper position with your natural mobility, and then also having the length to convert when passes come your way. And I think Marshall has all of those things too. So, just moving like a 5-star recruit, he definitely has that brand of mobility, and I'm really excited to see how far he can rise if he can keep growing. I'm of the mind that he is round 1 upside if he can get to that point. At number 34 on our watch list, we have Syracuse wide receiver Oronde Gadsden II. He's more of a wide receiver tight end hybrid. You see in the modern NFL, there's a lot of big slot receivers or move tight ends. Gadsden blurs the line between those. He's 6'5", 216 pounds, very, very big, but at that size, he's lean. He wears that weight very well. He's got great foot speed. He's a really streamlined athlete for that size. He outmatches any defensive back he faces, but he also has the smooth athleticism to surge through creases in the field. His hands are incredibly strong. You'll see him, even in contested situations, he authoritatively grips passes and he is not going to let go. I mean, he's a guy who's very, very reliable in that phase. And he was a big reason why the Syracuse offense was so productive last year. So I think you look at the modern NFL, guys who can be mismatches against a number of different opponents. Oronde Gadsden II really fits that mold. And on top of that, he's not just a production and not just a flash in the pan. This is a guy who you look at the tape and how he produces, and it really translates. At number 33 on our watch list, we have Miami safety James Williams. Miami has a very strong safety duo heading into the 2023 season with James Williams and Cameron Kinchens. Kinchens was the playmaker, right? He had all the ball production, but Williams might end up being the better prospect. 6'5", 224 pounds. You don't see safeties that come around at that kind of size. And, sometimes the idea of that prospect at that size is better than the prospect themselves. I do think sometimes, especially in the preseason, we tend to get carried away with prospects like that, like saying, oh, he's got elite size, so he'll be an elite player. That's not always the case. I think James Williams does have a little bit of room to grow. That said, there are instances where he'll come downhill. He's got great physicality coming downhill, but he does have the explosiveness and I think enough fluidity for his size to manage space and coverage. So I'm excited to see what he does this season. Again, I think we need more. We need a larger sample size for him with this kind of an outlier. But again, the upside, if he can reach a ceiling, it's fun to think about. At number 32 on our watch list, we have Georgia center Sedrick Van Pran-Granger. Sedrick Van Pran would have been one of my highest rated centers in the 2023 NFL draft had he declared. He ended up going back to school, and I think he has a chance to be the top center off the board in 2024. This is a guy who's 6'4", 310 pounds. He's well leveraged. He's very physical as a finisher. That whole entire Georgia offensive line, you will see they are physical. They play through each rep. But Sedrick Van Pran in particular, very explosive athlete. I think that was one thing that really caught my eye more than most traits. Is that, when he's tracking to the second level, it does not take him much time at all to get to that point. If you're a linebacker, if you delay for 1 second, Sedrick Van Pran can take away your angle because he is that kind of explosive athlete. And I think especially for centers, having the versatility to move upfield, to pull when you need to, right? Get off the snap quickly. Having that kind of profile is very appealing, especially in the modern NFL. And I think Van Pran-Granger provides a lot of that. At number 31 on our watch list, we have Penn State cornerback Kalen King. Joey Porter Jr. went just outside round 1 last cycle, and Kalen King could be another corner who challenges for round 1 capital. He doesn't quite have the size that Porter Jr. has. He's around 5'11" in the 180s range. So again, definitely not as big, but he is just as physical. I mean, you think about Devin Witherspoon from last cycle. There were highlights of him coming downhill and laying the wood against, unsuspecting screen receivers. Kalen King has that kind of physicality and support where he's going to give everything he's got. He's not going to hesitate. If he sees it, he is confident. He will attack that play. That's a very appealing quality for him. But he's also very fluid off the line. He can match guys. He's got speed. He's got great playmaking instincts. I think Kalen King in particular, for his size, he doesn't have elite length like Porter did, that can kind of increase your margin for error. But Kalen King, at the end of the day, he's got the coverage instincts. He's got the physicality. He's got the mentality that you want in a high-level corner. At number 30 on our watch list, we have Jeremiah Trotter Jr., linebacker out of Clemson. Clemson had a ton of quality defensive prospects in the 2023 NFL draft cycle, and they just have a wave of more in 2024. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., you might remember that name. He's actually the son of a former All-Pro Jeremiah Trotter Sr. At the same position, linebacker. And you can tell that Trotter Jr. has had the chance to learn from one of the best because he's one of the most instinctive linebackers in this class. He's very, very natural when it comes to shedding blocks, not just shedding blocks, but also sidestepping blocks and using his flexibility to kind of screech around blocks in the second level. He's very, very instinctive, managing space and sifting through congestion, but he's also a very, very good coverage defender with the football IQ, the spatial awareness, the athleticism to blanket lanes and really clog passing windows. So I think that 3-down upside definitely there with Jeremiah Trotter Jr. And I think in particular, we talked about it with Speights being a complete linebacker, having a complete profile. Trotter Jr. is another one who definitely has that. At number 29 on our watch list, we have Oregon quarterback Bo Nix. He's polarizing in some circles. He has been since he started his college career, but last year at Oregon, I think he showed off what his NFL potential can be. This is a guy who took a big step up on the efficiency side, the operational side. There's still room for him to keep growing as an independent processor, but one of the biggest knocks on Nix in his early college career was that he would turn chaotic situations and he would make them worse. He was a very volatile quarterback under pressure. That's changed. He's 6'2", 213. So not the biggest guy, but he's a very, very good athlete. I think that's something that gets slept on, is that he has legit high-end tools. He's very, very free moving as an athlete, very fluid, flipping his hips and changing directions, explosive, twitchy. But then at the same time too, when he's off platform, he's got the arm elasticity, the arm strength to create in that phase. I think all of the modern NFL traits that you look for from quarterbacks, Bo Nix has them. He's going to be a 24-year-old rookie, so age could be a concern for some, but I think you can construct an offense around his running ability and his off-platform ability. And I think he has legitimate high-end tools, which could buoy a starting projection. At number 28 on our watch list, we have Washington quarterback Michael Penix Jr. Like Nix, Penix will be a 24-year-old rookie. He also has an extensive injury history, so that could knock him off some NFL teams' boards. But I'm a big fan of Penix and his projection as a passer. You look at, what he was able to do in his first year at Washington under Kalen DeBoer, put up major numbers, but also put up a lot of quality reps on tape. We all know that he's an athlete. We know he's a competitor. You remember against Penn State at Indiana, that game-winning run selling out for the pylon, in the final moments. He's a guy who's going to sell out. He's going to lay everything on the line. He's got that competitive toughness that you want in a quarterback, but he also has phenomenal field vision, being able to pick out windows in the short and intermediate ranges, the deep ranges, outside the numbers. He's got a laser for a lefty. He's got a really good arm. He can layer throws with pace and touch. A big fan of that overall throwing upside that he has, that competitive toughness. I think as long as the medicals check out, I think you have a potential starter. I think, it's as simple as that. He would have been one of my top 5 QBs had he declared this past cycle. And I think he's definitely a guy to watch as a fringe round 1 candidate in 2024. At number 27 on our watch list, we have Texas A&M cornerback Tony Grimes. He was a former 5-star recruit, played at North Carolina the past couple seasons, and then transferred to Texas A&M. Again, Texas A&M produced Jalen Jones in the previous cycle. They've got Tyreek Chappell, but then also Grimes. I think he has round 1 upside for sure. Again, talking about a guy who moves like a 5-star. We mentioned that with Jason Marshall, and I think Tony Grimes has a similar brand of athleticism. He's more of a glider in space. He opens up his strides very easily, and once he does, he's very hard to shake for a wide receiver moving downfield. And then when the ball comes his way too, very, very natural at picking it out, kind of identifying those passes, identifying the trajectory, and then coordinating to get your hands in the right spot. He's got that playmaking gene that you love, and he has the gliding athleticism to get himself in the right spot. There are times where his zone awareness, his eye discipline can be a little bit better. He still has room to mature as a playmaker, but I think all of the tools are there when you look at the proportional length, the easy athleticism, and the mobility and the playmaking potential to truly be a star corner. I'm a big fan of Grimes' upside, and I hope that Texas A&M, that infrastructure at an SEC program, I hope that can help him take the next step. At number 26 on our watch list, we have Clemson linebacker Barrett Carter. Clemson has a lot of talent, man. We just talked about Jeremiah Trotter Jr. not too long ago, but Barrett Carter is right up there as one of the top linebacker prospects in the 2024 NFL draft as well. Another guy who, he's around 6 foot, 225. I want to say a little bit undersized for the linebacker position. He might even be a little bit smaller than that, but the way that he plays is just so fun to watch. He amassed 10.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, 2 picks, and 8 deflections in 2022. Playmaker coming downhill and support, behind the line of scrimmage. Playmaker in coverage. His dynamic versatility, it shows with his usage and his talent. He's a lightning bolt attacking downhill, explosive athlete. He explodes downhill with zeal, blitzing through gaps, but then he's got the twitch and range to hawk over short passes too. It can be a vulture in short coverage, defending those intermediate zones. So big fan of the versatility with Barrett Carter. You're looking at a guy who can blitz, he can pass rush, he can cover, he can fill the run. He can still be a little more consistent with his read and react ability, but he's a linebacker who legitimately checks all the boxes when you think about what he can do. At number 25 on our watch list, we have Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers. This is a guy that most people know. You should be able to recognize this name. He was a highly touted recruit, initially signed with Ohio State, but then after a year transferred to Texas, where he played as a starter for the first season in 2022. His first season, predictably was a little up and down. It was a little volatile, which we'd come to expect, but this year, entering his first year of eligibility, there's a lot of excitement for Ewers and what he can do. He's a guy who definitely needs to clean up his game. When you think about a young quarterback, it kind of comes as expected that there are areas in which he can grow. But that said, Quinn Ewers, the arm talent really pops with him. This is a guy who, makes it look easy when it comes to generating velocity and pushing that velocity into the intermediate and deep ranges. It doesn't take a lot of strain for him to do that. He can adjust his throwing angles while doing so as well. So the composite arm talent is really the prime selling point with Ewers. He can be that pocket passer who can really stress defenses with his ability to create and elongate throwing windows with his arm alone. And I think that's going to be a very exciting storyline to watch whether Ewers can grow and take that next step in his second year with the Longhorns offense. At number 24 on our watch list, we have Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy. This is a guy who 6'3". He was under 200 pounds last year, but he's reportedly bulked up, getting closer to 208 and maybe even 210 by the start of the season. That's what you'd like to see for a guy who has NFL aspirations, because on the field, man, the traits really stand out with McCarthy. He's a very, very good athlete for his size. He's a different athlete for his size, if we're being honest. It's a guy who's explosive. He's agile to change direction, twitch in open space, to offset defenders. He's got legitimate creation capacity for his size, and then he's got a hose for an arm. You know, a little bit lanky, a little bit lean, but when he has an opportunity to fully torque his hips and get his hips around, you see that full rotation. You see the kind of velocity that he can generate, and he can push past his pass tight coverage. There's a lot of room for him to tone down the volatility in his game, decision making, field vision, all pretty inconsistent right now. So this ranking is largely a projection, similar to Ewers, but you know what puts McCarthy over him is the creation capacity that he possesses. That mobility, that athleticism is an added element to his game that allows him to withstand adversity, create opportunities for himself, and create yardage on the ground alone. So McCarthy has a ton of upside, and with another year as the starter, we've heard great things about his mentality, his mental makeup. He may be able to take the next step. At number 23, we have Illinois defensive tackle Jer'Zhan Newton. This is a player who had a lot of hype in some scouting circles in the 2023 NFL draft cycle. There was a time where we thought maybe he would declare. He ended up going back, but 6'2", 280 pounds. He's a player who's very, very versatile. You look at how he can be used on the Illinois front, 3 tech, as wide as 5 tech, even inside at 1 tech on NASCAR fronts, stunting over interior blockers. He's a very versatile lineman. And one thing that really stood out to me is that for his size and for the role that he plays, playing at 3 tech a lot, right? His flexibility is absurd. This is a guy who's very, very free flowing as an athlete and as a mover in those tight lanes, those narrow lanes. He can use ankle flexion with successive hand usage to battle extensions and pry through gaps. He's got the attacking mentality and that attacking profile to work through that space. And I think, that combined ability could make him very appealing. We mentioned alignment versatility. It's a big thing in the modern NFL on the defensive line, and Jer'Zhan Newton has it more than most. He's a relentless attacker. He's hit the play pace that he plays with and the size, very hard to get a handle on this guy. And I think that NFL offensive linemen may have the same issues with him. At number 22 on our watch list, we have Texas wide receiver Xavier Worthy. Worthy is a fun evaluation. It kind of reminds me of the conversation we had on Emmanuel Forbes in the 2023 NFL draft cycle. Forbes was a phenomenal playmaker, one of the most productive coverage defenders in college football, period. But he weighed in the 160s range of the NFL Combine, and it came up as a big red flag for him. He ended up going in round 1 to the Washington Commanders, right? So, one of those things where, as much of an outlier as he is, it didn't matter for teams because he was just such a good player. And I look at Xavier Worthy, he might have a similar talking point on the other side of the ball. Wide receiver, he's around 6'1", listed at just 163 pounds. So very lean, very light. But at that size, he's a dynamic speed threat. He's a home run threat with his speed. And on top of that, too, he's not just a linear speed guy. He can offset defenders with stop and goes, double moves. He's a nuanced route runner who knows how to get open. And then at the catch point, too, he's so good at, first off, the speed allows him to stack and separate with ease. But even when defenders are near him, he's very instinctive at positioning himself and extending so that he has the best chance of getting that pass every time. And I think that instinctive ability combined with his home run speed and that route running nuance could really make Xavier Worthy the exception to the rule when it comes to wide receiver size. At number 21 on our watch list, we have Clemson safety Andrew Mukuba. He's 5'11", 185 pounds, not an overwhelming size threat, but I really love how elastic he is, both as an athlete and just as a defender with the amount of roles that he can fulfill. He's very, very free-flowing coming downhill. I love how he darts around in run support, adjusting and correcting his tackling angles, but then in off-man coverage too. He's got the foot speed, the lateral agility to match and run with receivers. He's very fluid in space as well. I think he's got all-encompassing mobility, which translates to all-encompassing usage as a defender. He can play single high, he can play 2 high, he can play in the slot. I think that's where he translates best at the next level. But in the modern NFL, you want defenders who can really play anywhere you put them, and you won't have an issue with it. And I think Mukuba in particular provides that personnel flexibility that will be very appealing to defensive coordinators later on. At number 20 on our watch list, we have LSU defensive tackle Maason Smith. he's a fun player. A lot of his projection with Smith, of course, he tore his ACL on the very first drive of the 2022 season, so he wasn't able to showcase his talent in 2022, but he broke out as a true freshman in 2021, had 4 sacks and 5 tackles for loss in that season. And there were some very impressive reps, particularly for his player type, his build. He's 6'5", 300 pounds. So he looks like a defensive tackle. He has size that other players can't match, but especially, against Florida, you saw him line up a 5 technique, and he's levying cross chop rip combos around the edge, around the apex, using ankle flexion to win around the corner at that size. I mean, stacking counters at that early age with that kind of talent, it's fun to think about what he can become. I liken him to, at his maximum projection, I think he could be a talent similar to Stephon Tuitt from Notre Dame, who was a hyper-productive college defender, went to Pittsburgh and had a very productive pro career. I think that kind of alignment versatility, that violent pass rushing utility, Maason Smith can bring that. He's got all the tools to do it. At number 19 on our watch list, we have Washington edge defender Bralen Trice. He had 9 sacks and 12 tackles for loss in 2022. There was talk that maybe he would declare for the draft, but instead he decided to return, and he has the profile to be one of the top edge guys in 2024. He's 6'4", 260 pounds. He's built like a power rusher, and it shows. He plays like it too. I think his primary move and the thing that he does best is bull rush right inside the tackle, get him to widen his torso, and then punish him for it. Bralen Trice is very good at that. He's got incredibly heavy hands. He's explosive off the line. He's got a hot motor, and he never stops until he's at the quarterback. He's a very good finisher of those pass rushing reps. He's a little stiff in his hips. He's not the bendiest guy, right? He's more of, he's a refrigerator out there, but that's a lot of mass to handle for an offensive tackle, especially with the combined burst and power that he provides. And I think especially with that, there's a reasonable path to success for him with that power capacity that he has. He's a very dynamic rusher off the edge from outside alignments because he has room to use speed to power. And I think we'll only continue to see him improve as he increases the depth of his pass rushing arsenal. At number 18 on our watch list, we have Ohio State offensive guard Donovan Jackson. He's around 6'4", 320 pounds, former 5-star recruit, so he has the pedigree, but he's already taken on starting reps early in his career, now entering his first year of eligibility. And there's a lot to like on his tape. At that size, 6'4", 320, with that frame already, you have great density, great natural strength. He's not an elite athlete, but I do think he has enough lateral mobility to handle stunts, right? He's a very smart blocker. He's got good football IQ, good awareness, and he can match guys laterally, looping stunters and rushers. But then at the same time, too, he's reported to have 36-inch arms. So that combination of natural leverage and proportional length can be absolutely suffocating for defensive linemen. That's a combination that allows Jackson to make contact quicker, play with superior leverage, and that's a tough combination to beat, right? So I think tried and true at the NFL level. He's got the pedigree as well. I would not be surprised if Donovan Jackson is one of the only round 1 interior offensive lineman next cycle. He's got to deliver with this year of play, but he has the traits to get it done. At number 17 on our watch list, we have Ohio State running back Treveyon Henderson. There's no Bijan Robinson in the 2024 NFL draft, but that's a high bar to clear. Bijan was a near generational RB prospect. Henderson isn't close to that, but he is a very good prospect for what he is. 5'10", 214 pounds. He's got great frame density, great natural leverage as a runner. He doesn't play too high. He's very explosive when accelerating up the field. And I think now that we'll see him fully healthy in 2023, there's a chance for him to get back to that 2021 level of play where he was a truly dynamic catalyst for that offense. Explosive runner, efficient runner, moving up the field. He's got enough agility to create space when he needs to and then capitalize with his burst. And then he's also shown to be a very natural receiving threat. So I think you look at 3-down upside, the dynamic running ability with that explosiveness, that contact balance. Treveyon Henderson provides a lot to like as long as he can stay healthy. At number 16 on our watch list, we have Iowa cornerback Cooper DeJean. In the 2023 cycle, Iowa had a first-round defender in Lucas Van Ness. I think it's a good chance that they could have another one in DeJean in 2024. He had 5 picks and 8 pass deflections in 2022. Also had 3 pick sixes. So this is a playmaker. You talk about Emmanuel Forbes. This is another guy kind of in that tier when it comes to converting on opportunities that he's given. But then Forbes lacked the size. DeJean does not lack size. He's 6'1", 209 pounds. So, he's got rare frame density and play strength for a corner. But then he's also a very free-flowing athlete. When you look at the lateral athleticism, the twitch that he has, the agility, he's very nimble, very light on his feet for that size. effortless accelerator when he's closing on plays and jumping routes. And then he's good in support too. He's a very complete corner with the size and athleticism to truly be, a one-of-one prospect. And I think, it could be Kool-Aid McKinstry is high on my board too. But if Dejan can have another strong season, we might be looking at him as a fringe CB1 candidate next year. At number 15 on our watch list, we have Ohio State defensive tackle Michael Hall Jr. This is my kind of defensive tackle. This is a guy who has the natural leverage at 6'2", 290 pounds, great frame density and mass, but also very good proportional length too. And what you can do with that is with that natural leverage, you can play under tackles, you can get inside the frame easier, you can capitalize with that proportional length. But Hall in particular, on top of that, he's got the explosiveness, he's got the agility to offset and work across face against interior blockers, and he also has very violent hands, and he's a great finisher when it comes to using those hands to capitalize on his natural foundation, the leverage, the explosiveness, all those things mixed together to create a productive defensive lineman. And he showed that in 2022, had 4.5 sacks, 7.5 tackles for loss. I think as we continue to see Hall work within that rotation, he'll only get more and more chances to prove to NFL teams that he's the real deal. At number 14 on our watch list, we have LSU wide receiver Malik Nabers. Now, there might be some apprehension with people, looking at Kayshon Boutte from LSU last cycle, had a lot of preseason hype, didn't quite deliver on that. But I'd encourage you not to scout the helmet, because I do think Boutte was an aberration. More importantly, I think Nabers individually has the traits to be a round one prospect. 6 foot, around 196, right? So not an overwhelming size threat, but he's one of the more complete receivers in this class, even at that size. I mean, it's kind of surprising how complete he is within the 3-level framework. He's a receiver who can offset defenders with a full release package. He can stack with his elite speed and explosiveness, but he's also got the route nuance to cut stems and kind of manipulate defensive backs. And then, when he stacks players and when he gets opportunities downfield with high catches and deep catches, very, very instinctive when it comes to adjusting and acquiring the proper positioning, getting his hands in the right spot and converting at the catch point. And then after the catch too, he's got size-defined contact balance and physicality. You don't expect him to roll off tackles like he does and create the way that he does at that size. So Malik Nabers, athleticism, competitive toughness for his size, conversion ability at the catch point, but then also the nuance to weaponize his athleticism and separate in all phases. I think he's a very quality receiving threat who's not getting enough hype right now. He could be a very, very highly picked receiver as long as he runs the way that he can, which is in that 4.3 range. At number 13 on our watch list, we have JT Tuimoloau, edge rusher from Ohio State. This is a fun player, man. This is a guy who's just a playmaker. He's always around the ball, and that kind of showed with his all-encompassing production in 2022. He does have room to refine his skill set as a pass rusher in particular. Still very much the talent over refinement argument at this point for Tuimoloau, but that's the exciting part. He's already this high. If he can reach his ceiling, he can truly be an early first-round prospect because he's 6'4", 277 pounds. This is a player who gets off the line very quickly. Again, a very nimble mover for his size, and with that size, that frame density, that length, very good power capacity as well. He's not the bendiest rusher, and you'll see that when he's trying to stress around the apex. Not the most flexible guy when it comes to rolling his hips through, but the heavy hands, the red hot, the unending motor, and then the combined athleticism underlying all of that. This is a player who has all the tools to elevate into the early first round range if he can reach his ceiling and if he can convert on that. At number 12 on our watch list, we have Rome Odunze, wide receiver out of Washington. 6'3", he was listed at 201 pounds in 2022, but there are rumors that he has bulked up even beyond that, which is pretty exciting because looking at his tape from last year, he already had good play strength after the catch, a slippery rack threat who can really, make defenders miss, but then also sift through congested lanes. He's got that going for him too, but he's also a very smooth athlete as a separator, a route runner. He can use double moves. He's got a refined route running package. He can use digs and outs and slants. He's got all of that in his arsenal at 6'3". It's exciting, how he separates for his size. He's got great contortion ability and instincts to the catch point as well. And if he can bulk up and retain that athleticism, we could be looking at a very, very complete 3-level receiver with plus size. And we see Marvin Harrison Jr. and all the hype that's around him right now. Rome Odunze, man, he might be an early to mid first rounder off of that argument too, especially if he can maintain his production in 2023. I don't think it's out of the question that he commands that kind of capital. At number 11 on our watch list, we have Notre Dame offensive tackle Joe Alt. There's a lot of preseason hype around this player. Some have him as their preseason OT1. I'm not quite there, but I am still very high on the upside that's present. He's a former tight end, and it shows with his mobility. He's 6'8", 315 pounds. I don't think size is the primary trait with him because I don't think his proportional length is elite. I think he's more in the 33.5 or 34-inch range when it comes to arm length. But what Joe Alt brings that not many tackles do, especially at that size, just outrageous recovery athleticism, outrageous flexibility, which he can use to play beyond his center of gravity and increase his blocking range. Big fan of all of those traits and how they culminate to give Joe Alt that winning combination. I think ultimately, when it's all said and done, especially after his testing, I think we're looking at an early to mid first round prospect. I think, he's got some room to keep refining his hand usage, but the traits are already so appealing and it's so easy to see a path to success for him. We've reached the top 10, and with the 10th spot on our watch list, we have Alabama edge rusher Dallas Turner. Will Anderson Jr. went 3rd overall to the Houston Texans. Dallas Turner isn't quite at that level yet, but he has the upside to go very, very high. I'll say that. Dallas Turner, 6'4", 240 pounds. He's got elite length at that size too. He's like a banshee going off the edge, man. He doesn't quite have the power and the hand usage that Anderson had, but what Turner brings that Anderson didn't is elite bend capacity. Turner is a lightning bolt off the line with his first step, but then he's also got the ankle flexion and the hip flexibility to dip under the apex and sustain his acceleration while doing so. And then his pursuit, right? I mean, this guy is scary in pursuit with that explosiveness, with that pursuit speed and that length, that wingspan, the reach that he can use to wrangle down ill-fated quarterbacks. It's something that you love to watch on tape. And then on top of that too, he's got the versatility, the power capacity with that burst and length, it's eye-popping as well. So I think Dallas Turner, he has room to keep refining his skill set, and he has room to add more of a functional strength element to his game, but he's got the burst, he's got the bend, he's got the power capacity, he's got all of that in his toolbox. I think all the foundation elements are there for Dallas Turner to truly be an early first round prospect. At number 9 on our watch list, we have Florida State edge rusher Jared Verse. Had he declared for the 2023 NFL draft, a lot of evaluators would agree that Verse would have been an early to mid first round prospect. That's how good he was in his first year at Florida State after transferring over from Albany. Obviously, he returned to school, 9 sacks and 17 tackles for loss in 2022. There's a chance he could even up those numbers in 2023, man. He's got all the tools to do it. Again, 6'4", 249 pounds. What you'll find that separates Verse from Turner, in my opinion, we talked about them. They're right next to each other on this watch list. I just think Verse is a little bit more complete right now. Verse has the size at 6'4", 249. He's got great burst. He's got great bend. Again, really good foot speed, urgent foot speed, bending around the edge. But then he's got the power capacity, he's got the hand strength and the hand nuance to stack counters and stack successive moves and combat extensions, and then convert and kind of, pry through the apex and enter pursuit. He's got all of that working in his favor. He's a good run defender too. I think the motor is there, the production is there, it all shows up. I think Jared Verse, Dallas Turner might have a slightly higher ceiling, but Jared Verse still has a very high ceiling, and he's already proven that he can convert on that and deliver on his potential. So I think 2023 should only bring more good things for him. At number 8 on our watch list, we have Alabama cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry. My friends, yes, it is safe to drink the Kool-Aid at this point. He's legit. Obviously, with any name like this, right, the name alone can be a delivery method for hype, right? Can overhype the prospect because they have a cool name or something. That shows up sometimes, believe it or not. But he's got the traits. It shows up on tape. He is legit. He is as advertised. He is the next first round corner prospect, in my opinion. 6'1", 188 pounds. He's got the size, he's got the length that you always want to see from these guys. But Kool-Aid McKinstry wasn't even eligible last year, and I think he was one of the more technically sound corners on the CFB circuit. He's very, very disciplined with his technique, very patient with his feet, but then at the same time, right as the receiver cuts his stem and chooses his attack lane, Kool-Aid McKinstry is right on him. He's physical. He will jam you. He will delay you, and he will wrestle you into submission with that targeted physicality. My favorite note on Kool-Aid McKinstry that I had in my preseason notes for him: his minimalistic feel for spacing has receivers suffocating for air on every rep. He's physical, he's athletic, but he's also very disciplined. He's very smart, and he knows how to use his traits to lock down receivers. So I'm a big fan of Kool-Aid. I think he's got all the tools, the athleticism, the length, the physicality, the instincts, the playmaking ability at the catch point too. He's the full package, and I think early on, you're already looking at a top 10 prospect. At number 7 on our watch list, we have Ohio State wide receiver Emeka Egbuka. Let me tell you, everyone, Ohio State had a good duo with Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson a couple years ago, but I think the duo of Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka might be even better. I already have a fringe blue chip grade on Egbuka. He's my 5th overall prospect right now. A big fan of what he brings to the table. 6'1", 205 pounds. He has some similar traits to Jackson Smith-Njigba from last year. Smith-Njigba had searing short area agility, play strength after the catch, very good catching instincts and coordination, right? I think Egbuka brings all of that, but I think Egbuka is more explosive. I think he is more potent as a run after catch threat. He's actually got really good contact balance and churning ability through contact. And I think that ultimately, his speed as well. He can stretch seams, he can stress defenses vertically, and he provides more of a vertical element than JSN did. I think Emeka Egbuka, you run him through the 3-level threat framework. He's a separator. He's a very nuanced separator who I think can, put defenders on a string with his zone coverage destruction abilities. I mean, he is very impressive in that phase. At the catch point, as a rack threat in particular in open space, very natural, making high difficulty adjustments in stride. And then the rack ability, the explosiveness, the contact balance, Emeka Egbuka is the real deal. And I think that, on top of having the high floor traits, he has a ton of upside in all 3 phases with his explosiveness, agility, and just that play strength, that length. Very excited to see what he can do, because I do think he would have been my wide receiver 1 last year, and he's not even wide receiver 1 in this class for me. So very impressive talent, very impressive prospect, and he's only trending up. At number 6 on our watch list, we have Georgia tight end Brock Bowers. You could have him in your top 5. That's fine. I wouldn't argue, because he is that good. The only reason he's not in my top 5 on this watch list is because of the quarterbacks, but he is as advertised. He is as good as the hype implies. He's amassed 119 catches for 1,824 yards and 20 touchdowns across his first 2 seasons. He's on a collision course with round 1 capital, man. It's not even a contest. It's not even a debate. Now Todd Monken was very good at creating space for Bowers, and now he's with the Ravens, but Bowers makes the most of it. He's an instant accelerator with his explosive athleticism, but he's also got great zone awareness. He can sit in open zones. He can haul in passes with his hand strength. He's got stifling hand strength, both amidst contact and in open space. He's got contact balance. He's got very good physicality after the catch too. You look at tight ends who provide value in all 3 phases. Bowers has it. He's legitimate. He's almost a wide receiver flex with all of his receiving upside. And then on top of that too, he's an elite run blocker. So that versatility as well, very valuable for NFL coaches. And I have to imagine, as long as he sustains his production, we're looking at a potential top 10 pick. Bowers is that good. He is that dynamic, and he is that versatile, which is something that's very important in the modern NFL. At number 5 on our watch list, we have Alabama offensive tackle J.C. Latham. Now, I promise you, everyone, I'm not just caping for the Alabama offensive tackle. I'm not just going by the helmet. I graded him. I ran his grade, and he actually scored a blue chip grade on my board. I'm a big fan of Latham and what he has to offer. 6'6", 335 pounds. He's a big dude, and he has very good length. I estimate 34.5-inch arms, maybe a little bit longer, but he's got clubs for arms, and he uses them. I mean, he's very powerful, but very explosive off the snap too. He's a high energy athlete for his size. He's got all the traits in the world, but then you watch him work in pass protection. He's very composed, very fluid with his pass sets, very patient and disciplined as a pass protector. He waits until rushers are in his wheelhouse to make moves. And then he's got good recovery athleticism too. He's got good knee bend for his size. I think J.C. Latham already is a very, very sound pass protector. I think there are some, you can nitpick here and there, but he's got what it takes to really lock down his side. And then on top of that too, he's a road grader as a run blocker with his explosiveness off the snap and his power capacity. He's a blue chip prospect on my board. And I think J.C. Latham, as more people get to his tape, they're going to come around on him. He is legitimate. He is not just a product of the school prestige. He is a legitimate NFL prospect, and I think he can be a very good right tackle at the next level. At number 4 on our watch list, we have Penn State offensive tackle Olu Fashanu. It's rare for offensive tackle prospects to look the part as much as Olu Fashanu does. He's coming out of his redshirt sophomore season. He's around 6'6", 321 pounds, but he's got great length. He hits all the size thresholds. He's also a superb athlete with the mobility and flexibility to match and recover against rushers and the violent hands to suffocate rushes. One thing that really stood out to me too, he's very, very nuanced and disciplined with his spacing, his positioning, staying square to edge rushers as they try to get him off his angle, off his set. But then he's also got a really strong inside hand, which he can use to suffocate power rushes. He's a very, very quality, he's got quality technique, but he's also, a high-end talent with the elite physical tools to become a blue chip franchise tackle. So I'm a big fan of Olu Fashanu. I would have had him as OT1 last cycle had he declared. So it goes without saying, he's my OT1 heading into the 2024 NFL draft cycle. At number 3 on our watch list, we have North Carolina quarterback Drake Maye. You've heard a lot about Caleb Williams and Drake Maye. A lot of people saying that this quarterback class is going to be even better than the last one. I won't go quite that far yet. I won't say that, because we tend to get into that mindset a little too early every cycle, saying the grass is greener on the other side. That's not always the case. I was a big fan of CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, and Anthony Richardson. I think Maye and Williams both have a little bit of work to do before they reach their maximum potential. I think Maye in particular, the youth shows up in his game at times. Mechanically, he plays too tall in the pocket sometimes. He's got more of a concentric release. He can be a little quicker. And as a processor too, an independent processor, still very much growing in that aspect of it. But when you want a quarterback who looks the part, who fits the prototypical mold and has the talent as well, you won't be too disappointed by Drake Maye in that front. He's 6'4", 220 pounds. He's got the size. He's got the athleticism. He's actually a pretty quick twitch athlete for his size when it comes to redirecting, generating momentum in the pocket, evading rushers. He can do all of that, but then he can also work off script. He's very natural, torquing his hips off platform, even when rolling to his left. And he's got the strongest arm in the class. If I were to wager it, I think he's even a little bit stronger than Williams in that department. He launches the ball with effortless velocity to all ranges. And I think that arm strength, when a quarterback really has a strong arm, you know it, because they make it look easy. And that's what Maye does. On top of that, for his age, for being as young as he is, being as productive as he is, that alone is very impressive. He's got some work to keep growing, but I think when you're looking for a franchise QB, the first thing you look for to separate them is the tools, and Maye has those tools in spades. At number 2 on our watch list, we have Ohio State wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. has my highest grade that I've ever given out right now. Now, to be fair, I haven't been grading for very long, especially with this scale. So it's a very small sample size, but that just goes to show how good of a prospect he is. At 6'4", 205 pounds, he makes things that would be unnatural for receivers of that size look natural. He is one of the best separators and route runners in this class already. He's probably the best at the catch point when it comes to contorting, getting his hands in the right spot, and converting and kind of stifling opposing defensive backs. And he's not a great run after catch threat. That's kind of the only hang up in his profile, but he doesn't need to be, because he's so good at separating and converting and keeping the chains moving and generating big plays. Whatever you need him to do, he can do it. This is a guy who's explosive, flexible as a route runner, but then also incredibly nuanced, right? It's just one of those things where he does all of those things at a different level. At that size, it's rare. An elite athlete, an elite technician combined with the size to dominate defensive backs, you don't see that very often, but that's something that Marvin Harrison Jr. has. So the hype is very much warranted. He's my wide receiver 1. He's my top overall prospect right now. And it wouldn't surprise me if later on we're talking about him in the same light as some of the greats from previous years. At number 1 on our latest top 50 watch list in the 2024 NFL draft, we have USC quarterback Caleb Williams. Not much of a surprise if you factor in both talent and positional value. He's going to come at the top of your board in most scenarios. 6'1", 215 pounds. The production is there. He's a defending Heisman winner. Now, he's not quite at that generational level, and I want to preface saying that because some people are already putting him in the same sense as Patrick Mahomes. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. He does have work to keep growing, especially in structure. Right now, he grades in a very similar range to the range that I had Stroud and Young and A-Rich last cycle. I was a big fan of all those guys, and already with one season still left to play, Williams is already in that range, already in that tier. So that's a good sign for him. I do want to see him keep improving on the processing side. A lot of the chaotic situations that he gets himself into, and to his credit, he's very good at navigating through those situations with his creation capacity. A lot of those situations are created by him overlooking an easy read or passing up the easy option, right? So I want to see him, improve his anticipation, improve his field vision. But when you think about the traits that teams bank on for franchise quarterbacks, for developing into stars at the next level, it's exactly that. It's that creation capacity, that ability to evade the rush, to create off platform, to, throw into tight windows with that combined elasticity and throw power. And Caleb Williams has all of that. And then on top of that too, he's a tenacious competitor. He gives you 110% on every down. So looking at that combined with the physical talent, there's room for him to keep growing, but he's also still a very young quarterback. So if he can take the necessary leaps in this cycle, generational might be a high bar to clear, but Caleb Williams could be the runaway QB1 if he can reach his potential, and he could be an easy franchise QB pick for whoever ends up with a number 1 overall pick. Thank you, as always, for tuning into our latest NFL draft content. Do you think any prospects were left off our latest watch list for the 2024 NFL draft? Let us know in the comments below. But in the meantime, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that bell so that you can be notified when our next video drops. Until next time, everyone, peace out. Have a good one.